We've got a killer on the podcast today. Nick is someone who I would categorize in the killer category.
I just kind of felt like I was on autopilot. I was like, wow, dude, I've literally become an NPC. This is crazy.
Adopting everything as your fault, it's not an easy thing, and I don't think a lot of people have that mindset. How did you adopt that?
I just got cut from the University of South Carolina. Like, nobody cares. It's all my fault, and it's up to you to get out of this. My girlfriend broke up with me. I had 2 offers of schools that I was going to transfer fall through, and so it was at that point that I really started to have the identity crisis.
We've got a killer on the podcast today. There's not many people out there that you can call a killer, but Nick is someone who I would categorize in the killer category. And I want to give you a quick story of how we met before getting into this podcast. And we met like 2 days ago, but this is how it went. I called one of my friends, Claude, he says that Nick is his mentor. He works for Nick. Claude and me, great relationship. So I'm on the phone with Claude. I'm talking. He's in Arizona, I think, at Nick's house. And he's like, yo, Anthony, you want to get Nick on the podcast? I'm like, yeah, yes, I would love to do that. So he's like, all right. He calls for Nick. Nick, come over here. Nick walks in and he goes, all right, Anthony, give him your pitch. So I'm sitting there like, oh shit, I was not expecting this. And so he flips the camera, puts Nick on there. And I'm like, Nick, like you should come on my podcast for X, Y, and Z. Horrible pitch. And then after I'm done talking, Nick's just standing there like this, dead stone cold face. And he looks at his phone and goes, let me check if it's okay with my wife. If you don't get that, it's a classic sales obligation or objection. But I thought that was pretty funny. But anyway, let me introduce Nick to you. He runs an online consulting business for sports coaches. Him and his company have helped over 230 coaches with their highest month being $100,000 in revenue. One of his clients is Ian Jenkins. If you don't know who that is, look him up. You'll be very impressed. And the last thing I have to say about Nick is, and I think this is pretty special. I mentioned Claude. I've watched some videos on Nick, and one thing that everybody seems to say about him is he is everybody's mentor, and he has changed a lot of people's lives. And I'd like to say that's something that we all strive for, which is it's very impressive, and respect to you, Nick. So with that being said, thank you for coming on Gross Potential. So excited to have this conversation.
Yeah, dude. Thank you for the great intro. I appreciate it. And yeah, I remember the call starts and Claude's just like, hey, talk to Anthony, like get on his podcast. I was like, all right, let's see what this kid's got. So I appreciate you having me on, man.
Yeah, of course. All right. So we went through a bunch of external things right there with that introduction. I think a good first question is, Nick, like, who are you and what is your mission?
Yeah. Honestly, that's something that I've spent a lot of time thinking about recently. Dating back, I felt like for a lot of the beginning of my life, I spent my time worrying about what other people thought, and I didn't really know what I wanted, or I didn't really know what I liked. I didn't know what I didn't like. I just made decisions based on what, I thought other people wanted from me. And so in terms of who I am, I'm somebody who's dedicated to being the best version of myself in everything that I can possibly do, chasing the never-ending pursuit of becoming the best version of yourself, whatever that looks like. And honestly, my mission is to impact as many people as I possibly can and, share the lessons and document my journey along the way. And if I'm able to help just one more person, find the light and be inspired and feel like there is hope for them, then I feel like I've lived a good life.
And so you mentioned that you used to be someone who cared a lot about what others think. And I still struggle with it. It's such a hard thing to kind of overcome, but I've made a lot of progress. What snapped you out of that?
Yeah. Well, I'll say number one, like, I think it's a never ending journey. I think it's natural to care what other people think.
Mm-hmm.
and not to get too much into like the evolutionary psychology, but it's kind of wired into who we are as human beings, is to, want to be accepted and want to be liked. So I think just understanding, number one, like giving yourself grace has helped me kind of through that, and understanding that, it's super normal to care what other people think. But in terms of like what actually snapped me out of it
Yeah.
was probably after my junior year of college. I just got cut from the University of South Carolina, ended up going to a summer ball team, got cut from that summer ball team. Girlfriend broke up with me, and I had two offers of schools that I was going to transfer fall through in the same day. So, I was kind of sitting there like, I'm 22 years old. I just had the worst baseball year of my entire life. Started off the year being the starting shortstop at the University of South Carolina, which was like, a dream come true. And then at the end of the year, I feel like I have nothing. And I realized that, everything in that situation was my fault. And that the reason why I was, in kind of a shitty situation, for lack of a better term, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on this, but
Oh, you can swear all you want. I swear all you want.
yeah, but like I was in a shitty situation, and I kind of just looked in the mirror and I was like, wow, like nobody cares. It's all my fault, and it's up to you to get out of this. And so that's when I really started valuing my own opinion, and started to kind of go on this discovery of, who do I want to become? And like, what do I want people to remember me by? Because at the time I didn't think that, if I were to die the next day, that I would have lived like a meaningful life. And that was scary to me.
Adopting everything as your fault, it's not an easy thing, and I don't think a lot of people have that mindset. But I think that's literally the best mindset ever, because it puts control into your hands. I'm curious, so like, how did you adopt that? Like, where did you get that from? Did it just come like that someday?
Yeah, I think just being the opposite for so long, you know, always wanted to point the finger, always wanted to, say that it was the circumstances, or that it was my parents' fault, or my partner's fault, or my teammates' fault, or my coach's fault, or, that ball took a bad hop, like something as simple as that. It was very difficult for me to take true accountability of things. And so I think it was just like, at some point I kind of just got sick of it, because it left me feeling like, I had no control over my own life. It left me feeling like, anytime I failed, that life was unfair, or anytime I had success, that it was lucky, because I didn't think that outcomes were within my control. So I kind of created this game for myself where no matter what happened, positive or negative outcome, I was going to lose. And that's just not a way that, I wanted to live my life anymore. And I was kind of sick of it. And I decided, like, okay, I kind of have always had this deep down feeling that I could do a lot more.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, well, if you're who you think you are, you're who you say you are, then you need to straighten the fuck up.
That year at South Carolina. So for people who don't know baseball, college baseball, being a starting shortstop at South Carolina is extremely impressive. Like, very, very hard to do. And so you get the starting job, you come in there, and you said at the end of the season you were cut, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I've got to say something was going on. And I just had Caleb Durbin on the podcast. I don't know if you know who Caleb Durbin is, but he went to WashU, D3 baseball player, one
Yep,
of
the Brewers.
three, right? And now he's 15 prospect at the Brewers. And he says about Major League Baseball, he says it's 100% all right here. Was that struggle from dropping off from right here at South Carolina to getting canned, was that between the ears?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. My entire life, well, at least my entire athletic career, I had lots of athletic potential. And especially, as I kind of matured as a collegiate athlete, I had all the athletic potential in the world.
Mm-hmm.
But it was the mindset. It was being able to stay in the present moment and live in the day to day, and continue to progress regardless of the outcome. But because of my inability to do that, when I was around other people who were just as talented, if not oftentimes more talented than I was,
Yeah.
the edge that the only chance that I would have had in order to have like a high level of success there would be to have like a rock solid mental game, and I didn't.
So, like, besides my fault, did you take any other actionable steps to develop this mindset? Because you're in an area with the online coaching space. Not a lot of people do this. You're helping Kraft and Ian Jenkins. That's super impressive. Like, how does your mindset set you apart? And what other action steps did you take to develop it?
Yeah, well, to be clear, Ian's crafted himself. I just tell him, I just tell him like, hey, this is what I've learned, and he applies it. So I'm not going to take any credit for what he's built, but in the sense of taking extreme ownership,
Mm.
I I think it's about being aware of your thoughts, number one, and as I kind of developed in my own like personal development journey, I started reading a lot more books. I started being a lot more careful about what I consumed. And that's not just like food, water, things like that, but like information, right? I think a lot of people don't understand that the information they consume is a part of their diet as well. And so I just tried to be very, very intentional about what I did and about what I allowed myself to be exposed to. And I think that served me exceptionally well.
Have you read the book Psycho Cybernetics?
You know what? I haven't, but I've heard it a couple times. So I feel like that's a pretty good indicator that I need to read it. Why?
You do need to read it. It's the best book I've ever read in my entire life. I'll give you some context. When I was younger, I played college baseball at WashU, but I always wanted to be a professional baseball player. But there was always a little voice in the back of my head saying, "You can't do this. You're never going to be able to hit 95. You can't compete with this person." And what that stemmed from probably stemmed from failures, probably stemmed from measuring up myself against other guys, probably stemmed from what my parents told me. I read this book, uh, I want to say a little over a year ago, right before I started my personal brand. And for the first time ever, I understood that I can craft my own reality. And anything that I actually truly imagine, I can achieve. And it all stems from the thoughts in your head because your thoughts create your reality. And I have this on a post-it note right here. But it's essentially exactly what you're saying. I cannot recommend this book enough. So it's definitely one that you should check out.
Yeah, I'll have to.
Yeah, it's definitely a good one. All right, so moving on to the next point. We mentioned baseball. You went to Notre Dame. You played at South Carolina. I think you set the home run record at Southern Illinois. So at this part in your life, is it fair to say that you're pretty set on, you want to go and play pro ball?
Ooh, you know what? After I got cut from South Carolina, I would say probably not.
Okay.
I would say I probably wasn't set on pro ball because at that point I was 22, hadn't ever had any success at the Division I level. I went to Notre Dame my freshman year of college, went to a junior college after that. And so I had kind of had some opportunities. I had had some fantastic opportunities that people would, kill for.
Yeah.
And I hadn't really taken advantage of them. And I started thinking like, what's the probability of me actually becoming a professional baseball player? At this point, it's probably pretty low. The word is kind of out on me. And at that moment, I kind of changed my priorities of what I really found important to me. And it was like being a good teammate and being a good leader and being a mentor to the younger people. And that's really what I went into my first year at Southern Illinois prioritizing. And I had the best year of my life in the sense of like how I enjoyed my day-to-day life. I probably didn't practice as hard as I used to, which, in hindsight may have served me a little bit because I was a little bit of a psychopath when it came to my training.
Yeah.
But then I went out, had a really good year. COVID happened. Wasn't sure if I was going to play again, but we ended up getting another year back. And so I spent the entire like quarantine all the way up until maybe like July, didn't touch a bat, didn't do any baseball stuff, just tried to get super strong because I was like, yo, I'm trying to get jacked.
Yeah.
Like that's what, honestly, like the reason I was trying to get jacked was respect from other men and attention from women, right? Those typically go hand in hand. And, and then I ended up playing in a summer ball league, and I was able to do things now that I could never do before. And I had a little bit of a mental break from the game. So I had a little bit, maybe more of like an objective look on it. And it allowed me to kind of take my emotions out of it. And at that point, when I came back like a completely different athlete, I was like, oh, like I might actually have a chance now. And so from that point moving forward, I shifted all my focus on like, okay, this is my last shot. I'm going to give it everything I have. So that way I don't regret it when I'm 85 years old. And just went super hard on my training, tried to be super disciplined, used the internet a lot to learn. And which I think, kind of leads into what I'm doing now.
Right. So at that time, though, I've got to think that your identity is baseball,
Sure.
right? Like that's everything that's all you know. And like being a student athlete, that is your identity growing up because you have to dedicate so much time for it. But you're at a point where that identity stops and now you're in the real world. So do you think you had an identity crisis at that time? Like how did you manage that? Walk me through what happened after graduation.
Yeah. Yeah. So I ended up signing to play for an independent baseball team for 10 days. It's probably the only thing that I had regretted about my baseball career in the sense of how I had felt about it. I think I've come to peace with it now,
Yeah.
just because I have the perspective to kind of look back and see what's transpired since then. But played 10 days of independent baseball, quit on my 24th birthday, started getting calls from, major league organizations asking me what my plan was. And I just told them like, hey, I'm done. I don't really want to be a baseball player anymore. Like this is not sick. And so I got a job at Kroger and I started reading. I was like, I'm going to try and get filthy rich because I thought that was going to be the answer to all my problems.
Yeah.
And at first, I dove super hard into it. I got a job at a mortgage bank and, it was like something brand new, right? Like it was like a challenge and I was all in for it. And I was like, this is awesome. Like I'm going to be a millionaire loan officer. Like this is amazing because I was surrounded by some like really successful people in the mortgage industry and in Arizona real estate. When it gets hot, it gets real hot, and people can make a lot of money. But I started looking at these people who were 40 years old. And I'm like, I wouldn't trade places with that person. And so it was at that point that I really started to have the identity crisis and, ask myself like, dude, is this really what life is? Like, if this is what life is, I should be playing minor league baseball right now. Like for peanuts, because at least I don't hate being alive. At least I don't hate looking in the mirror and being like, why did you do this to yourself? And so that was a really, really difficult time was, trying to find purpose, trying to find meaning and feeling like what I was doing was actually for something. Because I think, when you're ambitious, I think a lot of the enjoyment comes from building, comes from working towards something. It's not so much the accomplishment itself.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the act in the day to day. And I didn't feel like I was working towards anything. I just kind of felt like I was on autopilot. I was like, wow, dude, I've literally become an NPC. This is crazy. And so, yeah, that was really difficult.
Oh, I think that's something that a lot of people, like young kids, struggle with in college. Because it's like you're wired to just go and get that job. This is one of the biggest things. And my mom says this to me all the time. She's like, you're going to go into corporate and like you can't be making these videos. It's going to take time away from it. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, is corporate my end all be all? Is this really what I want to do for the rest of my life? So I can't adopt the mindset where I just push what I'm trying to do off right now because it's just like never going to happen. I think what a lot of kids do is they always have the entrepreneurial vision in the back of their head and then they just get into the corporate saying, "Oh yeah, I'll do it." And you just push it off and push it off and push it off. But like dude, the whole topic of purpose I think is one of the most important things ever. And so in your business right now, what is the underlying meaning of purpose? Is it seeing the client's success? Is it building up a team and making your team members' lives better? Like what is it?
Yeah, I think it's all of it.
Okay.
I think just having the opportunity to have an impact on so many different people. I think that's really what motivates me is like every time I look through my client results, I'm like, holy shit, dude. Like I seriously can't believe some of them sometimes. I'm like, dude, this guy came to me like for example, I got this guy who's actually a teacher right now.
Yeah.
And when he came to me, he was super skeptical. And, we get on the call and he's like really passionate about fitness. And I'm like, dude, like if you want to do fitness, like I'm not your guy. Like here are some people that you can look at. But if you want to do fitness and you want to do baseball, like you're probably not going to have success, like just straight up. And I told him that. And then, 4 days later, he's like, yo, send me the payment link. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, you want to do this? I'm like, all right, dude, like, I'll give you the opportunity. And that's kind of how I view it is, hey, like if you're starting from scratch or you're working a 9-to-5 job or whatever, like my program is your opportunity. And what you do with it is entirely up to you. And, dude, then he ended up coming to my mastermind in October. And then he just came to my house for our last in-person event. And he just posted something in our community saying he's done over 12,000 in revenue in March. And Wow. He's got a baby on the way. And yeah. And he's really changed as a man and his perspective on life. And so something like that, it's like the fact that I'm willing to put myself out there and grind my balls off every single day and do what other people are not willing to do is allowing me to, have that level of impact on people, completely change the trajectory of somebody's life, So that's what I really like, whether it's a client or a team member.
Is that your biggest client success story? Or if it's not, what is it?
Depends who you ask, bro. I've helped people go from scratch to making, $30,000 a month working in a facility.
Yeah.
I've actually one of my clients, I took their last dollar on a payment plan, right? They split it. And then they called their boyfriend after and asked them for money for groceries for the week. And when they joined, I was like, yo, if you want to make money ASAP, this is what you got to do. But you gotta listen to me. I'm like, you got to trust me. This is going to work. It's going to be different than anything you've ever done before, but it's going to work. And I promise you that if you do it, you will not regret it. And I think like in the first 30 days, it made like 17K.
Wow.
And now they do like 10 to 20K a month, hiring team members, like all that stuff. Dead broke.
How is it that easy though? Because we're in a day and age where there's a lot of social media gurus that go out there and they say, buy my course, you can make 10,000 a month ASAP. Like it's going to happen. And do you really believe that? Probably not. But you tell me a story like that, and it makes it seem like any single person out there in the world with coaching ability and drive can make a living online. How is it that easy?
Yeah.
Or is it that easy?
I would say that if you want to make money fast in the online space, you need to have a background in it, some way, shape, or form. Not just in sports, but in the online world in general.
Okay.
Right? You need to have a background in it because online is way different than in person, at least in the sports realm, in terms of like the way that you acquire customers and things like that. So if you're looking for a quick fix, unless you have an existing audience already that you've never launched this specific offer to, then it's probably going to take you a little bit of time. And by time, I mean probably, 4, 6, 12 months, just depending on your starting point. Mm-hmm. So, I wouldn't say that it's necessarily easy, but the hard part is the mindset that it takes in order to make it happen, because the actions themselves are pretty simple. I think a lot of people don't understand that, to have success in life on planet Earth, all you have to do are just the actions. And most of the time, in order to get ahead of like 99% of people, let's say, you just have to do those actions consistently. Mm-hmm. And if you just do those actions somewhat consistently, you'll probably still make 10 to 20K a month. Like you don't even have to be that good. You don't have to be perfect. So I think people just don't understand what's possible and they don't understand the leverage that online training gives you. Now, you have to be a good coach.
Yeah.
You have to be willing to put yourself out there, and you have to be willing to commit to the process. And if you don't have those three things, then this isn't going to work out for you. And if you're not willing to commit to the process, then nothing's going to work out for you.
It sounds like you're a little bit of a mindset coach too. Like you have to be to like coach your clients on mindset. Um, I'm big into psychology. I'm big into leadership and taking people on a vision and motivating them. So like when you get a client that comes in, how do you reframe what's up here to really get them to believe? Because a lot of it stems from limiting beliefs, just like psycho-cybernetics, that little voice in the back of your head.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if there's a hard and fast answer for that. At least I don't know it. In the sense of what we try and do, I think it all starts with awareness and finding the root of those beliefs and then trying to, pull that root out and then insert a new one. Right. And it's not an overnight fix. If we work with somebody for, let's say, 4 months, week one, oftentimes they are skeptical. They don't believe that this is actually true, and that when they've invested the money to work with us, I think a lot of the time they are fully prepared to lose it entirely. And so it's like an ongoing thing that we just have to continue to like chip away at it, chip away at it, chip away at it, chip away at it. And then when they start to see success, that is when they start to open up a little bit and think, okay, like maybe this guy is onto something. Like maybe what he's saying is actually true. Right. And once the door is cracked open a little bit, it's our job to kick it wide open and be like, hey, look at this entire world that's out there. It is so much bigger than you've ever imagined.
So the only issue with that though, because I'm just thinking it from my perspective, like when I set out to build my personal brand, I gave myself precisely a 0% chance of quitting from the stuff I read in the book, but also it's just like, I quit stuff in the past and I'm like, I'm going to be a quitter the rest of my life if I don't fucking figure this out. So I wasn't going to quit. I didn't need hand holding, but a lot of people don't have that mindset. So I get it. You get a client, they come in and you are waiting for them to see the light at the end of the tunnel. It's that little bit of success that gives them hope. But until that time, you mentioned you're chipping away, you're essentially hand holding and you just try to keep building them up and up and up. I'm just trying to figure it out, like as a leader, as a CEO, what does that process of hand holding look like to keep them bought in to this vision?
Sure. Yeah. I think, everybody has like a certain motivator, right? Everybody has a reason why. And if that reason why is big enough, then you won't need motivation. You won't need hand holding. You won't need us to push you, And in terms of the hand holding process, I think we just have to constantly remind people like why they're actually doing this. Because when things get tough, it's very easy to talk yourself out of continuing to go down this difficult path. Things start to get a little tough. The road gets a little bit bumpy. It's very easy to quit. Very, very, very easy to quit. And so I think it's our job to continue to remind people why they're doing it. And also, for lack of a better term, sell them on the vision, sell them on their vision, and continue to, because it's not about what we want. If you tell people what they should do or you tell people what they should think, then they're going to be, unless they trust you with everything that they have, which, is very rare, you need to make them think that it's their idea. You need to tie everything back to why it's best for them. And in my opinion, that's not just how you sell somebody to continue to stay motivated and keep doing the work, but it's how you get deals done. It's how you do business with people, is align your incentives and say, hey, I can help you accomplish this.
So that's a great point. I want to dig into that a little bit more because like one of your specialties, selling, digital marketing. But so digital marketing, you probably know your avatar, but you don't personally know them, and you don't know what really is internally motivating them. So how do you sell the vision on a broad scale through internet marketing?
Yeah. Yeah. So there's this concept that I learned from a mentor of mine. His name's Jeremy Haynes, one of the best digital marketers in today's social media space. And he talks about this concept of a majority hook and a minority hook. And so basically what you want to do is figure out and test a bunch of different angles of what people could be motivated by. Is it
Yeah.
money? Is it impact? Is it time freedom? Is it revenge? I don't know. There's a bunch of different motivators behind why somebody might want to take an action,
Mhm.
right? And so I think it's all about testing a bunch of different angles and making your content a bunch of different ways, and communicating the same message over and over again in a bunch of different ways to try and capture a larger portion of the market, but making the one message the same thing over and over and over again, and trying to speak to one specific type of person who is your ideal type of client, because that's going to streamline the entire process from the marketing to the sales process. It'll decrease your average sales cycle time. It'll decrease the time to result once they get in the program, and it'll increase the likelihood that they either retain or ascend, because you've basically created a conveyor belt for that one specific type of person.
Right. From your experience, is there one motivation that you found that is the most popular for your avatar?
Yeah, time freedom.
It is time. Why do you think
Time
that's the
freedom.
case?
Because they've created a business or created a source of income that is directly attached to the amount of time that they put in. And so because of that, because time is finite, their income will always be finite. And so that mental chain, almost, that they know that they can only make a certain amount of money. And pricing for training is fairly elastic. And what I mean by elastic is you're probably not going to be able to, infinitely increase your prices, right? With the exception of a handful of people. But they are stuck. They are stuck. They can't make more money because they don't want to spend more time, or they don't have more time.
Right.
Right. So.
Okay. What about okay, so getting back into the business, starting out from scratch, right? So you quit your mortgage job. I cannot pronounce that word. You quit that job, and you may have started another business before that. I think you started another one, but let's focus on this one. You can touch on the other one if you want. You're kind of starting from not a lot of credibility, right? You don't have a ton of followers on Instagram. And to succeed in this online space, I've got to think you need a personal brand. You need something that gives you authority. So how did you overcome that time and actually establish authority and credibility?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the underlying question that everybody has in the back of their mind when they watch their content, or when they watch your content, is, why should I listen to you?
Right.
And I had run an online training business. We did 250K in 10 months, trained 250 athletes. I think it's more like 280, all online. As I had a partner, a couple 25-year-olds on our laptop out of a backyard. So just me telling that story alone is enough for people to take notice, right? All I need is your attention.
Right.
All I need is your attention. If I can get your attention and you're the right type of person, the longer you listen to me talk, the more sold you're going to be on not only the opportunity, but the fact that I'm the person that can help you. And so when I started, I leveraged my own story, and I took on a case study of a client who had a pretty decent following at the time.
Yeah.
And made him a pretty banging offer, got him a bunch of results. And then I leveraged that case study to start promoting myself and saying, hey, look at what I did with this guy. Look at what I did with myself. And yeah, I just started promoting myself, and then I learned how to run follow ads to start getting new people onto my page. And I realized that you don't need a ton of followers to make money online. You really, really, really don't. What you need is you need a very dialed in marketing message, a high ticket offer, and you need to be really good at what you do.
Mm-hmm.
If you could do that, then you can establish the authority through the results that you get. And then over time, as you prove more and more results and you prove yourself to be an authority,
Yeah.
the authoritative following, quote unquote, will come with it.
So what about the freshman in college or the 16-year-old kid that just has a drive for entrepreneurship but doesn't have the proof that you used and the stories to tell? Are they missing something right here before they can jump to going full in, or are there ways around it to still start and gain credibility through an online business?
Yeah. Yeah. So if you're young, you have no results, you have no skills, and all you have is time,
Mm-hmm.
you're best off doing a handful of things. I think number one, you're best off working for somebody who's already done it. You know, whether that's free or paid doesn't really matter, but you need to work for somebody who's already done exactly what you want to do, and they'll be able to help you go a lot faster, right? Number two, the second option would be that you could buy a course and learn a skill and learn a specific skill that is in demand, ideally in a market where it's easy to find the types of people that you can help. And then when you start out, you probably need to do it for free to get a couple case studies,
Yeah.
because like there's this whole concept of like imposter syndrome, right? People just starting out, they're like, oh, I can't charge thousands of dollars, or, I don't know. And I think the reason why people have imposter syndrome like that is because they actually haven't done it. And so if you've actually done it, then that kind of wipes away the imposter syndrome, because
Yeah.
you have legitimate proof that you can look back at every single day. So if you're just starting out, then you just need to get better. Like you need skills, because if you had skills, you wouldn't be struggling to start and you wouldn't be struggling to make money.
Gotcha. Okay. I completely agree with that 100%. And on that topic of kind of doing credibility and authority, so something that Claude always talks about, and he tells me you help him with this though, is how to hold the frame as
Mm.
authority. So I'm trying to understand, first of all, what does that mean? What does that mean?
Yeah. Yeah. So the frame, for example, is just the way, like in this example, is the way that you're going to act within this interaction,
Okay.
right? So social dynamics, power dynamics, all those different things, you could do a bunch of research on that. But how you act and how you portray yourself and how you carry yourself, people will oftentimes just fall in line if you hold yourself in a certain way,
Yeah.
right? And so authority frame would be like, you are taking this call as if you are the one in charge, right? You are the expert. And so holding the authority frame is, I'm assuming whenever Claude tells you this, is about when somebody challenges the authority or somebody has a question, right? And oftentimes, if you don't truly deep down believe that you are the authority in that situation, and somebody challenges you or somebody questions you, you'll crack, right? You'll start to look like you're a little bit uncertain.
Right.
And so holding the authority frame, or just holding frame in general, is you have determined how this interaction is going to go, and they are either going to fall into the frame and act in the way that you've set it up, or you are willing to walk away from the conversation or the situation because you are the authority and they're not going to fall into line.
Gotcha. Do you apply that to, let's take away the business aspect of that, and let's take away sales calls? Do you apply that to your personal life And do you apply that to maybe your life with your employees?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
100%. I think,
So
go ahead.
like just walk me through, because do you know who Chase Hughes is? Have you ever heard of
Mm-mm.
that guy? Okay, so he's like a military behavioral specialist. A lot of the stuff you're saying right now, we have similar interests with this whole psychology, persuasion, influence. This whole framing concept is in this book. You should read this book. You would love it, and it'd help a lot with business. But anyway, something he says is always, it's like it's having the proper frame and two people competing frames. It's like this and this, but it's a measure to influence people. So like, do you have an example, just like a daily interaction with someone personally? How does the
Sure.
authority frame concept apply to that?
Sure. Okay. With women, for example, like if you're talking to a woman and you approach her,
Mm-hmm.
most of the time, what a woman is going to do, if she's actually somewhat attracted to you, is she's going to challenge you in some way, shape, or form. She's either going to challenge your confidence, or she's going to challenge, I don't know. Like I would probably just say like you in general, like your certainty in yourself,
Like a
right?
shit test, a shit test.
Exactly, exactly, exactly. From the game by Neil Strauss, right?
Yes.
So a woman will, say like, "Oh, I don't know if I like your shirt," or "That's what you're wearing," or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And she's testing you. She's testing you to see if you will bend to, "Oh, I can change my shirt," right? That turns a woman off.
Gotcha.
So that would be an example of losing the authority frame, whereas holding the authority frame or holding the frame of, I am the prize, which is a similar frame, right?
Yeah.
Is, oh, well, I like this shirt, you
So
know?
it stems from like internal certainty and confidence. That's what is that what is that the essence of the authority frame then?
Yeah, I mean, you could definitely fake it,
Yeah.
100%. You 100% can fake that with enough practice. But if that's truly who you are, then that's how you're going to act. You don't have to try and hold any sort of frame, you know? You just do.
And so I think a lot of this stuff tails into, I mean, sales. So like when you're on the phone, and I'll tell you this, before I really knew Claude that well, and I didn't know of you at this time, I told him, I'm like, I'm looking for a mentor. I'm looking to get into buy something that's going to teach me personal branding and teach me how to create content. And he's like, if you're going to do this, make sure when you get on the call with that guy, he's going to sell the fuck out of you. And he's like, my guy Nick, my mentor, sold the fuck out of me. So I'm trying to understand, like, your selling style. What is it? Are you someone who listens? Do you challenge? What's your approach?
Yeah, I think you got to be a little bit of a chameleon and you got to figure out like what that person needs in that time. I think sales is service. And it's your job as the salesperson to serve that person best in the way that they want to be served. And so if you only have one way to sell things, you're only going to sell one type of person. And it really limits you. So I think you need to be like a chameleon and understand like, okay, what does this person need in order to make an informed decision? Like, number one, where are they at in the buying journey?
Right.
How much education do they have on the topic or the product? And, how skeptical is this person? And how do they like to communicate? What type of individual, like what type of personality do they have? Those are all things that you need to play into account. I think the core principles are ask questions, listen to what they're saying. Don't just hear what they're saying, but listen to what they're saying and figure out how you can position your product as the solution to their problems, right? Serve them best. And if your product is not the solution to their problem, in no way, then tell them that. Don't try and sell them.
Right. Okay. So it's a lot of listening. It's adapting different mind frames. I think what a lot of people get struggle with, I'm just thinking ahead like what I would struggle with, is you get so tied down to a script. And sometimes it's tough to adapt and think off the dome. So like are there certain things you did to be able to think off the dome? Does it come with reps? or how'd you fix that?
Yeah, well, I've taken thousands of sales calls, so that's
Okay.
probably number one. Just straight reps. I've taken courses on how to sell. I've been trained formally, either in the mortgages or with online coaching. So I've done a lot of my own research. I've invested a lot of time and money to learn how
Yeah.
to sell. And I've also just kind of adopted it as a way of life. Like I think sales is a way of life. Being able to influence, being able to get what you want out of life, I think is a massive skill. And so when you practice it every single day, you end up getting pretty good at it, right? But it all starts with the mindset behind it, and that you are trying to serve people, right?
Mm,
You are not trying to convince them to do something that they don't want to do.
mm. Did you ever have the mindset where, because I'll tell you with myself, something I identified at the end of this year when I did my New Year's reflection is I was doing everything for me. Like I was not serving others. I did not have a love for all humanity. And honestly, it just left me with a bunch of like purposelessness and like emptiness inside. And so I made sure that this year I'm gonna freaking develop this stuff because I need to change. Was there a time in your business or in your life that you had it's everything for me, and did stuff just start picking up the moment you changed that, or what's your take on that?
Yeah, I would say it's something that I constantly struggle with,
Gotcha.
and I think I don't think it's inherently a bad thing to be selfish. I really don't. And that may be a little bit controversial. I think maybe some people get turned off by the word because there's such a negative connotation.
Yeah.
But by me being selfish and by creating something that gives opportunities to other people, then am I selfish or am I selfless?
Right.
So to answer your question, there are definitely times where I find myself like, how can Nick get rich, or how can Nick live a better life? And I try and always go back to, like, why am I really doing this? And who really needs my help most? Because at the end of the day, I've come to the conclusion that I have too many skills, too many resources, too much drive, too many connections to not live an incredible life.
Yeah.
I'm too dedicated to the process. So I'm going to be good for the rest of my life, and like, things will work out for me. I will make sure of that. So when I kind of came to that conclusion, I was like, okay, well, how can I help as many people come with me?
Gotcha. And so that right there is a self-fulfilling prophecy. And it's the same thing with vice versa. You flip it and it's negative and it just becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I think it's a fantastic mindset and it fires me up. Okay, so we're running out of time here, but there are two more questions that I want to ask you. And one of them ties into what you mentioned, that last thing there about like bringing people with you. 5 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years down the road, what do you want the lives of your team to be? How do you want to benefit their lives? What does that look like? Like paint a picture for us.
Yeah, I think each of them wants something a little bit different, but my goal is to have a vision so great and to have a business that is so amazing to work for that they can each see their own individual vision for what their life should be within my greater vision. And so I want them to be able to accomplish all of their goals, to be able to get everything they want
Yeah.
out of, working with me and living their dream lives, whatever that is. And obviously it's different for every single person that works with me, right? But being able to provide that opportunity to them and have them achieve everything that they want to achieve, I think that's the pinnacle of not only leadership, but masculinity in general.
And so what's next for you then? Is it anything different?
I think it's just more of the same stuff, dude. Finding problems and solving problems, finding problems, creating solutions, and giving them to people who need them in that order. I think one of the biggest things we want to focus on as a team is serving those who we can serve best,
Yeah.
right? Catering our business to one specific type of avatar, because that's something that we've learned is that as you grow and as you maybe start to spend more on ads, you need to be more and more and more specific, and not just more specific in your messaging, but how you serve those people as well. So my plan for the future is to, serve the people that we can serve best, help them solve their greatest problems, and, at the end of the day, win together. If all of my clients get filthy fucking rich, then, I'll be pretty good too.
I think I saw something too that you said that you want to fly your team private someday. Is that right?
Yeah.
That's
I
a
want to
fire
fly my team on a private jet.
That's a fire goal. Respect,
Yeah.
Nick. Thank you so much for coming on Gross Potential. I selfishly, I got a lot of value from this call, so I appreciate this a lot. I know that you're going to add a ton of value for other people too. Last thing, just so everybody knows, where can people find you?
Yeah. I live in Scottsdale. If you're ever at Optima Sonoran Village, say what's up. You can find me on Instagram at The Real Nick Neville. It's one word. And on YouTube, you can find me just Nick Neville. It's my name. Look it up. You'll be able to find me.
Awesome. Appreciate it big time, Nick. Thanks again for coming on.
Yeah, thank you for having me, bro. I appreciate it.
If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. Somewhere on the screen should direct you to somewhere else in our channel. But as always, believe foolishly.